Hi, I'm Ruby Steinbrecher. I'm an estate planning attorney based in Sebastopol, California. And today I want to talk about the difference between wills versus trusts. In another video, I went over the basics of estate planning. Now I want to specifically talk about wills. I want to talk about trusts, how they work together, how they're different. One thing that I say all the time is that a will is simply instructions to the court. When you create a will, that tells everybody what you want, who's in charge, who's getting what, when they're getting it, how they're getting it. But a will does not keep your estate out of court. If you have the assets that are over the probate threshold, which is real estate or financial assets in excess of $208,850, then your estate will have to go through probate in order to be distributed to your heirs or the people who are designated in your will. If there's no will, then the court is just going to follow the probate code, which basically follows your bloodline to determine who your heirs are and who gets to be in charge. If you do have a will, then if it's correctly created, signed, witnessed, and it's a valid will according to the terms of the court, then they're going to follow what the will says. But it does not keep your estate out of court. That's where a trust comes in. So many of us have heard the term a trust, but what does that actually mean? A trust is kind of a hard concept to wrap your head around initially because all it is a private agreement. It's a document you create where you specify who's in charge, who gets what, who gets it when, and then we include backups to all of that because we want to make sure this plan is really comprehensive. And that means that it covers every possible scenario we can think of, including the people that you've named not being able to act or not being able to receive the gifts from your estate. So a trust, again, that's a private legal document that you create. It's signed with a notary. We make sure that all of your assets are properly titled in the name of the trust. That's another way of saying we're funding the trust by ensuring that all of your assets have the name of the trust either in the title or as a pay-on-death beneficiary. That is the key legal mechanism that makes sure that no one would have to get a letter or authorization from the probate court in order for them to access your assets and distribute those assets according to your wishes. This is why it's called a trust, because you are putting your trust in someone else. That would be your designated successor trustee, and it's their job to make sure your wishes are carried out. When you create a living revocable trust during your lifetime, you can change it at any point. That's the whole reason it's called living revocable, because you do it while you're alive. You can revoke it, you can amend it, you can do whatever you want with the trust itself or the assets that you have titled into the trust. When you become permanently incapacitated or when you pass away, your trust then becomes irrevocable and no one can make any changes. At that time, it does become its own separate entity. Your trustee has to get a tax identification number from the IRS for that trust during the period that you're administering the estate. So a will is still done as a companion document to your revocable trust. And when it's done at the same time, it's called a pour-over will. And the reason for that is because it's there just as a backup to the trust. When you create a trust, it's a snapshot in time for your reality at that moment. The assets you own, the people who are in your life, the choices that you've made, and your life will change. It's very important that you keep your estate plan up to date to reflect those changes, but the will is there in case you don't. So what the will does when it's working in tandem with a trust is that the will simply names the trust as the beneficiary of your estate. And it would only be necessary to use that will and go to court if you have assets that you forgot to title in the name of the trust. And if those assets are real estate or in excess of the probate threshold of $208,850, then that asset is going to have to go through probate. But at the conclusion of probate, the judge signs an order saying, yes, you can now pour over those assets and title them into the name of the trust. And that way, the trust will always control the disposition of all of your assets, even if you happen to forget something. So that's really the big differences between a will and a trust. A will tells the court and people what you want, but it doesn't keep you out of court. A trust, when properly executed, properly funded, and kept up to date, that's how we make sure your estate stays out of court. Because the whole goal here is to keep your family out of court, out of conflict, and ensure that your assets go where you want them to go. So they don't go unclaimed to the state. They don't go to some relatives who you do not wish to have or benefit from those assets. And your plan, your wishes are carried out, and you can trust that everything is done correctly. And it's because we don't want you to be worrying all the time about this. There's a lot of things that are out of control, out of your control in the world. And this is something that you can actually control. So do it while you have capacity. Do it while you have the wherewithal to make these decisions. And this way you can be happy, have peace of mind, live life, enjoy life without being caught up in the constant anxiety of the what ifs. What if this happens? What if that happens? Because I'm sorry to tell you, but we are all going to die. It's just a fact of life. And it's important for us as a culture, as a society, to get better at this. And so that's what I'm here for. I'm happy to help you. I hope this was helpful for you. Please feel free to reach out to my office. We do a free 15-minute consultation. You can comment below. We'd love it if you would click to subscribe. We'll continue to provide all sorts of super helpful, educational, and informative videos here. Have a great day.